My stepmother kicked me out after my father's death, so I secretly bought her dream home and threw her out 3 days. That's how long it took for my stepmother, Diane, to change the locks after my father's funeral. I was 22, still wearing the black suit I'd buried him in, when I found my belongings in trash bags on the driveway of the house my grandfather built. Diane stood on the porch, clutching a glass of my father's expensive scotch, and told me that since the house was in her name, I was officially a trespasser. She wanted the dream home all to herself. She didn't realize that a house is just wood and stone, but a mortgage is a weapon, and 10 years later, I was finally ready to pull the trigger. My father was a brilliant man, but he was a romantic fool. When he married Diane, he fell for the doting wife act. He put the deed to our family estate in her name as a wedding gift, a gesture of absolute trust. I tried to warn him. I saw the way she looked at the silver. I saw the way she isolated him from his old friends. But by the time he got sick, she had full control. The day he died, her grief lasted exactly as long as it took to check the balance on his life insurance policy. "Get off my property," she had hissed that afternoon on the driveway. "You were always a burden to your father. This is my house now. Go find somewhere else to be a failure." I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I picked up my trash bags, looked at the house one last time, and made myself a promise. I wouldn't just get my house back. I would wait until she was comfortable. I would wait until she had spent every cent of the insurance money. I would wait until she felt untouchable. I spent the next decade working in distressed asset management. I learned how banks think. I learned how debt moves. I moved to the city, lived on ramen, and built a firm that specialized in buying toxic private debt. While I was building an empire, Diane was busy destroying hers. She didn't work. She didn't maintain the house. She took out a massive second mortgage to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. Lavish parties, spiritual retreats, and bad investments. I kept tabs on the property every single month. 6 months ago, the flag went up. The dream home was in pre-foreclosure. Diane had missed 4 payments, and the private lender was looking to offload the note quickly to avoid a public auction. I didn't just buy the debt. I bought the holding company that owned the debt. I was no longer just the burden she kicked out. I was now her landlord. And her grace period had just expired. I didn't show up in a flashy car. I rented a standard gray sedan and wore a generic suit. I wanted to see the queen in her crumbling palace before I tore it down. When I pulled up the long driveway, the house looked magnificent from a distance, but up close, the cracks were showing. Peeling paint, overgrown hedges, and a fountain that had long since run dry. I rang the bell. Diane opened the door, draped in silk and smelling of midday gin. She didn't recognize me. 10 years and a beard will do that. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking me up and down with that same old condescending sneer. "I'm with the asset management group representing your primary lender," I said, keeping my voice professional and flat. "We're conducting a mandatory interior valuation for the restructuring of your debt." She let me in, complaining the whole time about banking red tape. As I walked through the halls, my heart ached. This was where my father taught me to play chess. This was where my mother's piano used to sit. Diane had gutted the soul of the place. She'd replaced my mother's antiques with cheap, modern glitz that was already falling apart. "I'm expecting a large settlement soon," she lied, waving a hand dismissively at a stack of past due notices on the marble counter. "This is all just a temporary misunderstanding. I'm sure your company understands that a property of this stature requires a certain level of patience." "Oh, we understand perfectly, Diane," I said. She froze. "How do you know my name? I didn't give it to you." "It's on the deed," I replied smoothly, snapping a photo of the water damage in the ceiling. Or rather, it was on the deed. Currently, the title is held in trust by the debt holder. She laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "Well, tell your bosses I'm not going anywhere. My husband left me this house. It's my legacy." I stopped in front of the portrait of my father. She hadn't even bothered to keep it clean. Dust sat thick on the frame. I reached out and wiped it away with my thumb. "Legacies are earned, not stolen," I whispered. "Excuse me," she snapped, stepping toward me. "I think it's time for you to leave. You've seen enough." "I have," I said, finally turning to face her fully. I took off my sunglasses. I've seen that you didn't even bother to fix the roof my father worked 3 jobs to pay for. I've seen that you've turned a family home into a monument to your own ego." The color drained from her face. The gin-soaked haze evaporated. She squinted, looking at the bridge of my nose, the set of my jaw. "Wait. Leo?" she stammered, using my middle name, the one my father called me. "It's been a long time, Diane. You told me 10 years ago that I was a trespasser. Do you remember?" She backed away, hitting the edge of the table. You can't be here. I'll call the police." I pulled a thick envelope from my briefcase and set it on the dusty counter. "Actually, I've already called them. They'll be here in 48 hours to oversee the physical eviction. You see, I didn't just buy the debt. I bought the house. Cash. Through a subsidiary you'll never be able to sue." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a cold whisper. "You have 2 days to pack the trash bags you gave me 10 years ago. Anything left on the property after Thursday becomes my personal property. And Diane, I'm going to burn everything you bought and restore the house to the way my father loved it." She started to scream, a frantic, desperate sound, but I was already walking toward the door. "See you on Thursday," I said without looking back. "Try not to leave a mess. I've already hired the cleaning crew." Thursday, 9 a.m. A light drizzle was falling, mirroring the day she threw me out a decade ago. I pulled up to the gates that used to be locked against me, and watched the flashing lights of the sheriff's cruiser reflect off the wet pavement. Diane hadn't moved a single box. She was still trying to play the victim, standing on the porch in a fur coat, screaming at the deputies about squatters' rights and illegal takeovers. She thought her drama could stop the wheels of a multi-million-dollar asset seizure. She was wrong. I stepped out of my car, holding the original mahogany key to the front door, the one I'd kept in a velvet box for 10 years. "Mr. Miller," the sheriff said, nodding to me. "She's refusing to vacate. We're going to have to proceed with a forced removal." "Do what you have to do," I said. I watched as 2 deputies walked up the steps. Diane tried to block the door, but the law doesn't care about a socialite's ego. They guided her out, her expensive heels clicking frantically as she stumbled down the stairs I used to scrub as a teenager. "You can't do this," she shrieked, seeing me. "This is my home. You're a monster, just like your mother was." I didn't lose my temper. I walked over to the edge of the driveway where a pile of black industrial trash bags was waiting. I handed one to her. "Here," I said, my voice as cold as the rain. "I remember you liked these. They're heavy duty, perfect for packing a life built on lies." She looked at the bag, then at me, and for the first time I saw the true terror in her eyes. She realized the money was gone, the house was gone, and the burden she'd discarded was now the only person with the power to help her, and I wasn't going to. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whimpered, her voice cracking. "I hear the motel downtown has weekly rates," I replied. "Maybe you can find another romantic fool there, but stay away from my family's name. If I ever hear you've used my father's reputation for a cent, I'll sue you into the next century." I watched the taxi pull away, taking her and her 3 suitcases of designer clothes, the only thing she truly owned. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I walked into the house alone. The smell of her perfume was already fading, replaced by the damp, honest scent of the old wood. I went straight to my father's study. I sat in his old leather chair. It was cracked and worn, but it still felt like him. I opened the bottom drawer, the one Diane never knew had a false back. I reached in and pulled out a small framed photo of my mother and father on their wedding day. She had missed it. It was still there, waiting for me. They say you can't go home again, but they're wrong. You just have to be patient enough to buy the deed. Diane thought she won when she changed the locks, but she forgot that a house isn't a prize. It's a responsibility. Tomorrow, the contractors arrive. We're tearing out the marble, fixing the roof, and bringing back the soul of this place. My father's house is finally a home again. And as for Diane, I hope she likes the view from that motel. I hear it's very temporary.